what I'd like to do is introduce a 60-year broadcaster who is a talented man, done many, many different jobs, worked in many different stations, and he is named Lou Klein. Lou?
Thank you very much. Well, welcome. I start with good news for all you. There are jobs out there. And there are probably more jobs out there today than ever before. When I started broadcasting a long, long time ago, there were only 3 networks. I'm from Philadelphia, and we had 4 stations. Today, you turn on your television set, and there are hundreds of channels. People have to write for those channels. People have to direct for those channels. People have to sell advertising for those channels. People have to perform on those channels. And so the opportunity today and in the future, in the near future, for you that'll be graduating with a year or 2, or maybe even this year, there are jobs out there. And you can get them. And whether you get them or not is really up to you. I promise you, I know, that some of you are going to get those jobs. And sad to say, I know some of you aren't going to get those jobs. And it's going to depend completely on you. If you have the passion, if you have the drive, if you really, really want to be in this business, you can do it. And you're going to hear from the panelists as to how you can do it. Listen carefully. A suggestion, a hint, a trick, a gimmick, anything, just a little thing can open the door. You heard before we had here, you heard how learning that someone was interested in pets and animals and playing on that. Just that. Now, so listen carefully. I'm going to ask the panelists, 1, to say what their job is. What do they do? 2, what was their career path? How did they get there? And 3, what suggestions out of their experience they can give you so that in the future years, you can be sitting up here. So I'm going to start right out. I should say, I'm not going to do any introductions, because just by what we're going to be doing, the panelists will be introducing themselves and explaining what they do and how they got there. So I'm just going to start right off with Candace Archer.
Good. Good morning, everyone. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, good. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Candace. I work at the ABC television station KGO here in San Francisco, owned by Disney. It all began when I was a kid, and my parents used to ground me from the television. I showed them, didn't I? I feel like that's really loud, right?
Is she getting feedback from this?
Yeah, it's quite fun over there.
Take it
We're
away.
in broadcast, so we don't know much about scary.
Are you sure? Is that better? Yeah. Okay, good. As I was saying, I still feel like it's loud. Those of us are behind, on the other side of the camera for a reason. You'll see that. There's one of us at least here that's going to be amazing on this panel. Anyway, it like Lou said, it starts with a passion, and if you guys have a passion, you'll follow that. So I thank you all for being here. I think it's really important, and I do believe that you are the future of our industry, and I also believe that while it's changing, our industry has never been more of a challenge or more exciting of a place or a community to be a part of. It's really exciting. There's a lot going on and a lot to do. So about me, I started as an intern in college. I went to college in Sacramento at Sac State. Yay, Sacramento alum there. I liked TV, like I said. In college, I became a news junkie. I worked at a television station From the time I never had a, drive-through fast food kind of job. I went straight to TV. So I don't know what else I would do if I wasn't doing TV, really. Started as a production assistant, moved on to being an assignment editor in a newsroom. And then my general manager at the time recommended that I become part of a fellowship that Tribune Broadcasting at the time did. One piece of advice I have for any of you is if you meet someone who you see as a mentor, as a leader, be a sponge. Take in everything that they can. That fellowship that I did out of Atlanta for about 1.5 years, I learned everything that I still use today. I didn't learn much of that in college. I don't think a lot of us probably didn't. The stuff that we're using today and every day wasn't taught out of a book. It's about your experiences. From Atlanta and my fellowship, I moved on to KRON here in San Francisco. Actually, Pat Patton, who you met earlier, was my boss at one time. Pat Patton also laid me off at one time. Yeah. Most of you will probably be laid off at one time. But when one door closes, another one opens. And I got a wonderful job out in Honolulu, Hawaii. Yes, you do actually work when you work in Hawaii. A group of people going one way with surfboards in their hands, and I was going the other way to the office. But another place that I was really able to learn a lot, I had a great mentor there. I worked for the CBS television station in Honolulu. Some of you might know, or you might read about at some point, one of the first times this were to happen, a shared services agreement between 3 television stations took place while I was there. The CBS, the NBC, and an independent television station. We don't use the word merged, because that's not what happened. It became a shared services agreement. We basically, on a Friday, all of our competitors on another station, we were in the same building, working for the same channel, the same company, literally putting the same product on the air on Monday. It was the first time it ever happened in the country. It's happened several times in other places since then. It all happened within 90 days. I was part of the senior management team then that helped lead that through. It was crazy, and I learned a ton. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about what can happen with a great team, and one true focus, and setting aside any competitive differences that you have for the better of your future and the company's future. From there, I got a phone call one day from another soon-to-be mentor out at a Los Angeles television station, KABC, owned by the Walt Disney Company. I became a promotion manager there. I just realized that I didn't tell you all what I do at KABC here in San Francisco. Sorry. It was all that feedback. I'm the Vice President of Creative Services. So what that means is I market and promote the brand, the ABC7 brand. I'm a brand ambassador. I'm part of the management team there that helps guide the direction of the television station. And its creative services department used to be about creating promos and putting pretty graphics on the air, and it's become about much more than that. And I'll get into that a little bit more. Anyway, so at KABC, I was a promotions manager. I did that for 2 years when this job opening here in San Francisco opened up. San Francisco, the Bay Area, is home for my husband and myself, so we came back here. And I have been working at KRON at KGO for about 2 years now. Sorry.
That's all right.
So that was kind of my path. Again, Vice President of Creative Services, marketing and branding is what I do. Right now, as we were saying, television industry is definitely changing. There's a completely new platform to get the word out about what we do and to spread what we do. That's social media. You're all on social media, I imagine. For me, it has become a promotional platform, a content provider, and it's a whole new realm that frankly none of us really had to worry about before. And it's growing like crazy. So that has become the biggest, I think, change in my tenure is that. Everything that we do now is a way of marketing and branding because it goes out so quickly. What else? That's all. I should stop talking. I'm gonna pass it on to you now. Don't forget to tell them what you do.
Well, don't.
I did. When I talk about mentors, that's what
Fantastic, unbelievable. All right, good to go?
Don't pass it on directly. I just want to re-emphasize what you just heard. I don't know if you can see that. The headline's pretty big. But internships lead to jobs. How many of you have had internships? Okay, I should put it another way. If anybody didn't raise their hand, you better go out and get an internship. Because the first question that you're going to be asked when you go in for your interview for that first job is, where did you not did you intern, where did you intern? So most of you have raised your hand, so you are interning and you appreciate the fact of what the internship means. So now, Jim, look. Jim Crow, he didn't have far to go because he's here at KRON.
Thank you. My name is Jim Crow. Been here at KRON now for only 5 weeks. I'm the digital sales manager. I worked at Hearst for a while, worked for Hubbard Broadcasting. That's when I started my career in Albuquerque, and just came from Scripps. So I've worked for some really good companies, trying to figure out the digital space. And as she explained, the digital space has changed the landscape of broadcasting completely. Even though I have sales attached to my name, it might scare some of you. The broadcast sales is what drives, obviously, the revenue of the stations and the broadcast industry and our digital space. Content is the other thing that is so critical to what we do. Married together is probably the most powerful thing that we've seen in the broadcast industry ever. When I started 7 years ago, we didn't even have a mobile app at the station I worked at. And I could ask all of you in this room right now, would you rather receive your information this way, or did most of you receive it this way or online? You know, the other big question I ask, and I hear this a lot, everybody goes, digital's the future. It's not the future. The future was a long time ago. It's you know, I hear people say, oh, it's here to stay. Well, yeah, it's definitely here to stay. I think we figured that out. And two, it's like nobody's figured it out yet. It continually grows every day. Technology pushes us further and further along. Social networking is beyond important. It's changed the way we touch people every second of every day. But you know, the great thing about television and digital, this is where you may go and get it first, but to get the deep content, you're going to go back to television, you're going to go back to radio. And that's the thing, that it has prolonged the life of television and radio forever. And in sales, I know some of you are looking, you want to be a news anchor, you want to get into the sexy part of the business. That's great, but I can tell you right now, digital sales is awesome. My job changes every day. I don't know what I'm walking into every day, but it's exciting. Digital TV broadcast has a certain reach, and after that, someone else has to take over, right? With digital, there are no boundaries, none. We can sit here in San Francisco, and if we have a client here in San Francisco that has a location in New York, guess what? We can serve them in New York. Well, broadcast wasn't able to do that unless you owned a TV station in New York. Then you might be able to do that. But our networks have expanded so much, and it's exciting. And even on the creative side, a lot, you know, in digital sales, we wear a creative hat, a technical hat, and the sales hat. But the great thing is we're reaching out to businesses now in a completely different way than we ever did before. And we're really digging in deep with these businesses to help them succeed. And if you can help a business succeed, we've done a great job. That's what we do. We partner with businesses now, you know, we're solution oriented more than ever. It's not just about one media. So I encourage you to kind of look at sales a little differently, because we're growing. And 8 years ago, a lot of companies didn't even have a digital sales force. Newspapers figured it out. Some newspapers have 15, 20 people doing digital sales in a market, and they have a content staff massaging their websites of 15 to 20 people deep. Paywall's coming, you know, that's important. If you hear a story, you get 30 seconds of a story on television, you want more deep content, you're gonna go back to the web, or you're gonna go back to your mobile device, and you're gonna pay for that story, and you're gonna have all these great writers and contributors, and you're gonna pay for that, whatever it may be, $1 to go and read that deep content. So it's super, super important what we're doing and what we're figuring out. So it's an exciting time to be in sales, especially digital sales. I spent a little bit more about myself. I spent 15 years in radio broadcasting and 16 years in the music business. So I feel really blessed that I've gone from radio to records to now television. But it's amazing how fast digital has grown. When I got into it 8 years ago, we didn't know what we were doing. Seriously, none of us did. Didn't even know what a CPM was. Nowadays, you look back, we were selling display ads. That's it. Just display ads. We had nothing else. Now we're just tied in with so many different things and expanding so fast. So it's a great, great time for you to step up. And we're all tied in with Google. We're all tied in with everything that's out there. And when you walk into a company that wants to get their message across, and it's a good message, there's no better way to do it than with TV and digital and radio. It's just, there's no better ways, there's no better space, right? So, yeah, but thank you for all coming. I'm here all day for questions. We got the job fair coming up. Beat me up, ask me questions. I'm very passionate about digital, and I'll talk your ear off about it. So.
Find out what a CPM is before you leave.
Yeah. How many people know a CPM? No, but it's cost per thousand if you don't know. But yeah, it's a great time to be doing what we're doing. So, congratulations for being here. And it was funny you mentioned that the people that aren't here, well, they may be working for Google and sleeping in this morning, so that's not too bad either. But the great thing about doing what we do, you can launch from broadcasting into something else, and I'm proof of it because I've worked from radio to records to stepping into digital. Really, when I signed up for the job, I got hired because of my creativity. The job description wasn't even really that clear, and I got defined through the years. So if you're a creative person, great time to be in the broadcast industry because there are no boundaries right now. None. No bad ideas, trust me. That's about it. Any other questions?
You get the sense of passion. Yeah. But again, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. There are so many jobs to be filled, and it's a situation that really hasn't existed in this business before. So you should feel very optimistic. The opportunities are there. Now, Carolina Echeverria, I got it right the first time, didn't I? But I also said I might not get it right. Yeah. Now, right. You're on.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for having us. As mentioned, I'm Carolina Echeverria, and I work for Univision. And many of you, I wouldn't be surprised that still will say, Univision, I kind of heard of them, but I'm not sure. And the first thing that comes is, oh yeah, Spanish television and radio. We are not only Spanish television and radio, we are actually have already English too. We have a new cable station, Fusion. Locally, we have a radio station that is all in English also. So I think that one of the things that you have to consider, because a lot of times you would think, oh my God, Spanish television, I don't know Spanish. That's it, not for me. Well, do consider it. We do have people that are bilingual, people that only speak English, people that only speak Spanish, and it's really beyond language. My job is community affairs, and my job actually is being in contact with our community, with our viewers, our listeners, and that's, again, not only Spanish speakers, but we do have English speakers or bilingual people that are looking into our content. So we're more than just Spanish, we are really a content broadcaster. And you will see in our news, or you will see in our products, that we have a very different point of view. Whenever there's something happening in Venezuela, whenever there's something happening in certain specific countries, or things that affect our community and our viewers, we will have it on our air. And we'll have it in very depth because people depend on us. We were just talking this morning. Imagine you go to another country and suddenly you see news that really are relevant to you. And beyond not only the language, these are things that you're really eager to know what's happening, not only locally, but what's happening to a world that is really relevant to you. Your family might be there, there are different needs. Think about immigration. We are covering immigration up and down 24/7 because that's what our viewers and our listeners are looking for. So for us, media is that contact with the viewer and the listener. And that's my role. So community affairs many times will think, I get calls saying, like, can news come and cover? A lot of times you forget that there's a community affairs, that we do have a lot of programs that can be your driver to that message that you're trying to send out to that community. So I am the door for the station, in and out. Whenever news is saying what's happening on these issues, one example was what's happening on consumer protection. There are a lot of frauds out there. We don't know what to do. We put together an expert group, committee, and now they're actually driving a segment on the news every week. So that's the door that, putting in contact the community and putting in contact our station with that community. And that's, I think, that a role that media plays really well to make sure that we address, we are really there for our viewers and our listeners. And the more connected we are with them, the more we are relevant to them, the more loyal viewers and listeners we have. And that's been Univision's formula. We keep growing, and we keep growing because people really want to go to Univision to get what we're offering them. So we have an education campaign within my role. We have developed an education campaign. We know that our viewers need to understand the system. We know our viewers need to understand the importance of education, so we have taken that role. We also have a health campaign. We have a financial literacy campaign. And you might think, oh, well, yeah, they need to learn how to, savings account. Are you guys challenged with your finances? Well, that's media role too. We can help you understand how to deal with your finances. You're going to have an internship, you're going to have expenses, you're going to have a scholarship, you're going to have financial aid. How are you planning on all that? So it's not only thinking about opening a savings account, it's really going to the needs of our listeners and viewers and making sure that we're addressing those issues through our different channels, programs, anything that we can have available. So in my role, I think that one of the things is really important is creativity. You don't stop and say, well, yeah, I lost that program. I did. I actually lost my public affairs program. Therefore, I don't produce anything so bad. Oh, no. I have news. I have radio. I have a morning show. I have PSAs. I'm going to recreate my education campaign. It's not gone because I lost my program. And I think that in the media, that's happening more often. Ratings go up and down, or investments, or people, whatever happens. You reinvent yourself every day. And you have at your disposal the mic, the cameras, the radios, the digital media, and you make it happen, because that's what media is nowadays. It's not done, it's not there for you to use, it's there for you to create. And it's there for you to create, to decide what's your goal. If your goal is to help parents with their kids, if your goal is to inform people about an issue that is important to your channel or to you, that's what you do. You look for those elements to make sure that people are following you on that issue. Then you get ratings, then you go on sale. If you're not relevant to your viewers and your listeners, then you're struggling all the time to get them to listen to you. Like, oh my God, what are we going to invent now? Just listen to who you're talking to. They're going to follow you if you're relevant to them. And so again, that's my role, and I'm very passionate about it. I didn't grow up in the media. I actually grew up doing communications in Mexico. I did my college and master's in Mexico. I came to the US to work for a marketing research company. And marketing actually really helps you because that's listening to the consumer to sell them something. So that's the other message. It doesn't matter where you're studying and your job is right now. Everything is going to help you to the next step. It's not like, oh, I have to do this to this. It's whatever you're doing. If you're learning, if you're passionate, if you're enjoying it, if you want to grow, the next step will come. And you might be in another industry. When I have students, a lot of times I say, like, okay, some of you might want to be nurses or whatever. You might end up in the media. You might end up having a program about medical issues in the media. So don't think of media like something, not within your world. It is within your world, whatever you're doing. And media, it's a mic, it's a camera that helps you spread that message. So just consider that, for me, the move from marketing research to media was, now I have the mic to really send that message out, to really address the issues for our community. The other thing that I wanted to mention is we do have some people that actually really don't know any Spanish and have worked for Univision many years. And they say, it's not the language, it's not Spanish or English, it's the media language. The machine works the same way. So as long as I know how to, push the button, the right button, and most probably it's going to be in English, I'm fine. So don't be afraid of considering beyond what you think is to you or yours. Look, really, media is immense. And so look beyond your market, look beyond, don't say, oh, that's not for me, because. Go and knock at that door and check what are the skills that they're looking for. What do you know about them? What can you bring to the table? And that will open the door beyond, I don't know Chinese, is not for me. So those will be kind of my ideas today.
Great, thank you. How many of you are bilingual? How about that?
Can you tell them really quick how quickly the Hispanic population
Is growing?
It is very important. It's something we all consider to talk about every day.
Yeah, I just think it's important, and look around, diversity is among us. And so now the Latino population is actually the biggest minority in some markets. California is going to be leading in that way. But again, it's not only Hispanic, I think it's diversity.
Absolutely.
That we have to stop considering that we're all the same and start looking around and saying, oh yeah, the diversity is among us, and that's who we are.
Part of our communities.
Correct. Thank you, Ken.
Well, certainly being bilingual can be a great help for those of you that are. And the amount of money being spent by advertisers to reach the Latino consumer has just grown by bounds and bounds and bounds. So that's certainly an area for you to be thinking about. Now we turn to J.D. Friedman of Clear Channel.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Okay, great. First of all, let me introduce three people that I've brought with me today that will be great people for you to introduce yourself to when you go to the job fair. They are all three people who work for Clear Channel Media. One of them is Jason Chen. Jason, why don't you raise your hand up there? Jason's in our activations department and events manager. And then Eric Fisher, where are you, Eric? Eric is our video and new media lead. And then Stephanie Ocho Torreno. Stephanie is my assistant, executive assistant. She's also the market office manager. Now those three jobs, when I kind of defined what it is that they do, activation and events manager, Clear Channel Media plus entertainment. We have 7 radio stations in San Francisco. Our company owns 840 radio stations across the United States. But when we talk about radio, it's a lot like in the digital world. If your business can be digitized it's going to be disrupted. And it doesn't matter what kind of business you're in. Radio, television has been disrupted by it being able to be digitized. And what that means is it brings down all the barriers on how you can receive that. That means you don't have to have a radio to pick up a radio station. Doesn't mean you need to have a television to pick up a television station. We have the ability through the iHeartRadio app that you can put on your phone, download for free, please do it today, to pick up any of our 840 radio stations across the United States. If you want to listen to a hip hop radio station in Atlanta, Georgia, you can. If you want to listen to a country radio station in Houston, Texas, you can. If we want to listen to our radio stations here in San Francisco, if I'm out of the city or if I drive down to Los Angeles, I can listen to our radio stations all day long on my cell phone or on my computer or on my iPad. Essentially, digitizing everything brings the barriers down. It allows you to get the content where you are, when you want it. So for radio, what that meant for us is that we had to realize this. People have an affinity towards, there's a symbiotic relationship between music and radio. And essentially, that's where people discover new music. That's still where people discover new music. If you hear an artist, there's a large chance, 70 to 75% chance that you heard that artist first on radio. Now, there's other ways to hear them. Clear Channel Radio also is in what we call the musical distribution of playlists. And you'll hear a lot about the new digital media such as Pandora or Spotify. Essentially what you have there are playlists, and they're very much like you have your iTunes playlist, where you can create your own playlist for yourself. Okay, I'm going to play this song first, this one second, third, fourth, fifth. We have the iHeart ability to create your own radio station, your own playlist. So you can say, well, I only like this artist, and this artist. Okay, well, create a radio station for yourself. The difference between playlists and radio is what I call humanity, because we have personalities. We have people who you can relate to, who are part of your community, who can tell you what's going on in the community, who can relate to how your lifestyle is. If you drive from the peninsula area into the city or the city to the peninsula, you know every day that there are going to be things that you're going to have barriers before you have to get to work. And how are you going to find out about that? Well, if you're listening to the radio, we're going to give you a traffic report to say, guess what? There's a traffic jam on the 101. Or it's a very clear day from a weather standpoint. It's not going to slow you down the weather. And then there's going to be a companion there. There's a one-to-one companionship that you have with radio, personality. Whether it's JV and Rico and Selena on Wild 94 in the morning, or whether you have Renelle, who works on KISS for us, who also works for the Giants. She's going to talk about the Giants game the morning after. You're going to hear that on KISS. Or you're going to be able to hear Sana G on KMEL, who does mornings for us over there. Or Ryan Seacrest, an afternoon drive on Star. These are all personalities that bring humanity to your life and community to your life. So when you hear people talk about radio and you read these articles about radio is dead, it's not dead. It's in transformation. It's just like television's in transformation. We're all in transformation. Jason works in the activations and events department. Essentially in activations, we do activations in 3 ways. And what that means is we engage with the consumer 3 different ways. We do it on the air, we do it online, and we do it on site. We do a lot of personal appearances. We do a lot online. You can listen to any of our radio station online, anywhere you are. And you can also listen on the air live. Eric, who works in the video department and new media leads, we have a complete social media department where we have Twitter accounts, we have Facebook accounts for the radio stations, as well as personalities. And we also have a performance lounge. It's very much the same size as this, and essentially what that means is we bring in the artists who play the music for us. They like to come by. We create private performances for the listeners. We have 4 HD cameras in there. So we create video-purposed content that we put online so our listeners can go on and say, well, wait a minute, they've got an interview with Kanye West. I'm going to go over there to their website and I'm going to see what Kanye had to say. We've had performers in that performance lounge, everybody from Ed Sheeran to Kanye West to John Legend to Kid Ink, Lord, Pink has been in and performed. So we're in the media plus entertainment business. The iHeart Music Festival, which is held in Las Vegas every year, it's been going for 3 years now, brings basically the best musical artists all in one place. So you're going to hear from the pop genre to the hip hop genre to the country genre. You're going to hear the best artists in all of those. We take that show, and there's a giveaway tickets on the air, so that drives a lot of listenership. But then we also video the show, and then that show is run on the CW network. We're doing the iHeartRadio Music Awards in May, in about a month, and that's going to be broadcast on NBC. So we have a video partnership with that. Essentially what we do is take the entertainment of music and we push it out in a lot of different ways, whether it's on air, online, or on site. Little background on me. I was a musician, and you kind of look around and say, okay, what are you going to do as a musician? You going to play, or are you going to teach? What are you going to do? And one day I walked in and met a guy that said, hey, have you ever considered radio? And he said, you got an okay voice, you could maybe go on the radio. So I went in, worked, I applied for a job at a radio station in Salt Lake City, Utah. I was going to the University of Utah. And I thought, well, I'm going to go in and apply for a job at a radio station. I got on the air, and it didn't really matter what the station was. I just thought, well, if I get on any radio station, that'll be great. Well, it was a country radio station. I didn't know anything about country music. But I went in on a Saturday morning, very early, and started playing music and started talking into the microphone. And I found one album that I recognized. It was Bob Dylan.
That was country?
Well, that was a mistake I made.
Yeah, that was a country.
That was the mistake I made. I played the entire album, both sides. And at the end of the show, a gentleman came in who called himself the program director and said, thank you very much, we won't need you anymore. So I got fired the first day I was in the business. And I remember that, and I thought, okay, well, what was it that I did that was wrong? Well, I did a lot of things wrong. The most important thing I did wrong was I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't a student of country music or what they were doing. I didn't need to grow up on the back 40 to do it. I needed to be a broadcaster. I wasn't prepared. And interestingly enough, if you look at the timeline of my career, I'm the market president for Clear Channel Media and Entertainment. Later in my career, I became the general manager of KZLA in Los Angeles, which is the biggest country radio station in America. So in one sense, I looked at that as a learning experience. So every time you have something that you get pushed back on, a failure that you'll have, don't call them a failure, have a setback. You'll have a setback, but don't stop trying. Some other little bit about my career. I did want to be a musician, but got on the air again, got another chance, and came up through the on-air side. I was a radio personality for a number of years. And I got to a certain point and realized, well, I'm probably not going to be Dick Clark or any big radio personality. And so I got into the programming. I was in the programming side. So I was on the content side of deciding what music was being played, what personalities were being put on the air. And then from there, I became the general manager. I worked for a company called Shamrock Broadcasting at one time, which was Roy Disney, which was part of the Disney family. And we owned a number of radio stations across the country, and I had the ability to work in just about every radio format there is. Everything from news talk to Spanish language to rock to hip hop to country. And essentially I became a student of what it was that people listened to and what they related to. And what was it about that community and that culture that was important. And that's what broadcasters do. We identify communities and we broadcast to them. And radio is an amazing business today. 94% of the American public still listens to radio every day. They don't listen to it the way they used to. They listen to it in different ways. Now, if you want to get a baseball game or something and you want to hear, let's say you're a fan of the Chicago Cubs, you can hear that game on the radio here. You can go through your mobile phone. You can hear it. So all of those barriers are coming down with digital. We have all of these jobs in radio now that you wouldn't think are just radio jobs. They're video jobs. They're digital jobs. They're social media jobs. There are on-air jobs. There are personality jobs. And what I would say is that from a career standpoint, you have to reinvent yourself every couple of years. You have to look at it because what's going to happen is what you learned is not going to get you where you need to go. When I started the business, we played vinyl records. Well, they belong in museums today. They're just not around. Some of us still have them. But I think you have to be willing to reinvent yourself. Other parts of my career, I've been the market president here in San Francisco for 3 years. Prior to that, market president in Dallas, Texas. And when I was in Dallas, I was involved with the original 5-group radio broadcast group that created the Amber Plan. And I know you've all heard about the Amber Alerts. Well, I was living in Dallas when Amber Hagerman was abducted. And as a broadcast organization, the radio groups came together and said, what can we do? What can we do to help our community? We created the Amber Alert in Dallas, Texas. That came from radio. And that is a huge difference in community service today when you think about it. There are things that you can do that can change people's lives. And I think the Amber Alert was one of those. I also was a senior vice president over 168 radio stations based out of Phoenix. I had Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. So I've worked in everything from a very small radio station to a very big radio station. And they're really all the same. There's just one extra zero on the big radio stations. So you want to get to the big ones. So one thing in terms of suggestions, what I would suggest to you is don't let anybody define your limitations. Don't let somebody say you don't belong here, you don't belong on this station, or I don't think you've got the talent to do this. I think those barriers, those limitations are in your head. And if you let somebody else get into your head, then you certainly will be deterred from what your capabilities and possibilities are. If the day that I was told that they didn't need me back anymore at the radio station, I would have taken them seriously, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So I think from that standpoint, don't let anybody define what you can do.
Wait a minute. An important message that you've just heard is to be prepared. When you go in for an interview, you've got to know about the station, you've got to know about the person that you're going to be meeting with, and the thing is that the opportunity for you to learn all of that is at your fingertips now. You can find out about the station, you can find out about the competition that the station has, you can find out about the staffing, you can know the programming, so that you can go in really prepared. And so that actually leads us to being prepared, because Dick, you're going to, or Scott, Greg is going to introduce you to Scott and the interview.
Paulina! Hey, let's sit here for it, Paulina.
Nice to meet you. You want to angle a little open up for you on that, for that camera? Okay.
All right, let me make a couple of introductory comments. Part of it is, as you heard, it's getting to know people. But once you get to know them, what do you actually say when you go in for an interview? And it's more than just your pitch. So Scott Howard, who was a news director in the Chico Redding market for 2 television stations, an NBC and a CBS affiliate, and you guys also have the CW.
CW.
So again, you think about how the industry changes and you want to pay attention to companies and people. Scott is a news veteran, and indeed as a news director in that market, and you've spent much of your career there. He's interviewed a lot of people. So Paulina Guerin has volunteered to be our interviewee today. So Scott, show no mercy. But Paulina, thank you so much for your willingness to be here.
Also get your own mic too. Okay. Well, thank you everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to this interview. I normally do it privately, but we have a few people looking here, but don't let that bother you. First of all, welcome. You're going to Santa Clara University?
Yes.
You're a sophomore?
Yep.
And you're from Yonkers?
Yes, from Yonkers, New York.
So what brings you to the west side?
I always knew I wanted to come to California for college, so when I applied to 5 schools here in California and 5 back home. And then I visited them and saw the kind of atmosphere, because I usually like to be in a community feeling. So when I saw Santa Clara, I really liked what they had to offer and decided to go there.
What did they have to offer?
They had a different type of atmosphere than at any other college. There was really small class sizes, the professors were really nice, and I just had this sense of community when I went on the tours, and I really liked that about Santa Clara.
Okay, so your major is communications, sociology. What
Yes.
do you want to get out of that?
My dream is to have my own talk show. My communications major is helping me understand how the whole process works and the production side of the entertainment industry, and I think that's really important in order to be an on-air personality or something like that. And so sociology is helping me understand people, and eventually I would like to have a show about relationships. So sociology kind of allows me to look at society, the way it's organized, and learn things that I don't know besides that.
Okay. So our station
Yes.
is Market 132.
Mhm.
It's considered small, maybe medium. We have a wide range of people as far as talents, experience, but we do have room for college grads, entry level.
Mhm.
So how do you think you could fit in our organization, and what would you want to get out of that?
I think any organization I could join, experience is something that I am all out to get. I know that I'm really young and I don't have any internships right now that I've done. By the time I graduate, I would like to have some internships done and get that experience. And I think in any job that I work in, experience is going to help me learn and become a better person in what I do. Any position is what I'm open to. Like, I definitely want to start something lower in the ranks, like an assistant production or something like that, to better understand and kind of learn from the elders and how everything works.
I'm an elder, huh?
Yeah. Well, more experience,
You guys
better
aren't.
knowledge.
I'm an elder. Okay, so
More experience.
I can't wait for the talk show. Pauline. So, okay. Do you have a plan at college right now? Do you have a plan? Do you know where you might want an internship? And then you're thinking, if I can get into a place like KHSL or Action News Now is what we call it, that you could start at the bottom, either producing or production assistant or something like that. But in college, what do you have a plan right now?
For this summer, one of my professors is doing a film on campus, and I want to help out during the summer stay and help him with whatever position he would like me to do and kind of gain experience that way. And he has a crew coming in and things like that, so a lot of professionals will be working on the project, so I think that would be a great opportunity to learn and do that summer internship with him. And just working at small local stations, I think, will help me, especially like summer, junior year, to get experience in order to work at a bigger.
Were you, the Dalai Lama visited your campus in the fall?
Yes, he did. I think fall or winter.
But he visited
Yes,
recently.
he did. Yes,
Right.
he did.
What was, did you track that? Did you read about it? Did you
Yeah.
visit any of his speeches?
I watched because I wasn't able to get a ticket. There were only 1,000 given out, but I did watch the live broadcast, and I tweeted during the event and things like that, and they asked us to.
So you tweeted.
Yes. They asked us to tweet questions,
Okay.
and so if we had anything to ask him or whatever we thought about the event, there was a page made by the school.
So you're Paulina, the talk show host, and
Yes.
you have the Dalai Lama on your show.
Yes.
What question are you going to ask him? First one.
I guess, why did you choose to do what you do? Maybe. I kind of find out about what brought
That's way too easy of a question for the Dalai Lama. No, I'm just kidding. The answer will go on forever, no.
Yeah, probably.
So, but that's who knows? You could do it. You could do it. News of the day. What's dominating the news the last few days?
Recently, there's the highway accident that happened with the FedEx truck and the charter bus. So that was definitely tragic, and it happened yesterday. So that's been recently,
yeah.
I think. So that's been.
Yeah, it was a Thursday night. Yeah. That was in our market. That
Yeah.
was a big deal for us.
Definitely.
And it was a big issue, and when you first tell me what you thought. You first heard it was a group of students.
Well, it definitely affected me because I know I went to visit college campuses too, and so it was definitely tragic to read that something like that happened. It wasn't expected. It was just a normal bus, one of the 3, I think, that were heading to visit schools that got hit. So that was definitely something that you don't think any day an accident can happen like that. So.
How did you first find out about that happened? I mean, where did you get the news?
I don't remember. I think one of my friends may have said that, did you hear about this? So I looked it up and researched it online myself. But I think it was through a group of friends. They were talking about, did you hear about this accident that happened?
Have you pretty much tracked it with your smartphone?
Yeah. I do get a lot of information from my smartphone.
Tell me about your news. How do you read it? How do you look at it? Do you read the headlines? Look deeper into what you want?
Yeah, basically, you just look at. I have certain sites that I like to look out at, especially like local news or wider news, and then just look at the headlines, see what's currently happening or what's new, and then read those stories.
So you're a sophomore,
Yes.
and so pretty soon you're gonna have to start delving into some of your major classes.
Yes.
Does it include any kind of research?
Yes, there's 2 research classes that I haven't taken yet, but I'll be taking next year
Okay.
for communications.
All right, because, that's will be, well, we, you, and then we're gonna have to be more than headline readers, and
Right.
we're gonna have to understand, help interpret, frame events
Mhm.
and issues.
Yeah,
About
I've taken a
what's going
journalism class, an introductory one, last fall. So that was definitely interesting to learn how stories develop and how like a second day story is different from the first day story and things like that. So it's definitely interesting to see.
Does that include any writing at all?
Yes, we did we did like 3 main stories throughout the quarter and to help us learn how to write and do.
You're fluent, you're Polish, Ukrainian?
Yes.
Tell me about your background.
My parents were born in Poland. They came here as immigrants, and so I'm sort of the first generation college student in my family. And so, yeah, my first language was Ukrainian. I didn't speak English until I went to school in kindergarten, and that's when I learned to speak English.
Have you been to the Ukraine?
No, I haven't, but I've been to Poland. That's where they're from.
What do you think about what's going on right now
In Ukraine. It's definitely a rough situation. I don't know what to think about Russia trying to invade, if they are, if they aren't. I mean, I've been keeping up to date on the news, but
What are your parents telling you? What are you getting from them, your family?
Well, I do have family in Ukraine, but we don't really keep contact with them. They're mostly in Poland, so
Sure.
we don't really contact with them. But my parents are definitely keeping up on the situation and reading on it and, trying to
Yeah,
understand.
they had, I guess, some gunmen took over, or allegedly took over some police buildings
Mhm.
not too long ago, according to something breaking over. You were a hostess at J.C. Fogarty's.
Yes. At a restaurant. Yes.
How long you did that for? About a year.
About a year, yes.
Okay, all right. Let's do a little role play here.
Okay.
Okay, you're the host.
Yes.
You sat me down to a table. You left. Now I came back and said, "I hate this table. These people next to me are really loud. What can you do for me?"
I'm really sorry about that. Would you like to sit at a different table? Where would you prefer to sit? I can move you wherever you would like.
Well, where's that going to be?
Wherever you choose to sit.
What if I don't like that spot?
Then I'll move you again wherever you would like.
Okay. Tell me, in any of your jobs, maybe at the restaurant or whatever, everybody makes mistakes.
Right.
Can you recall something, you made a mistake, you blew it, and how you might have solved it, rectified the situation?
Okay. When I started, I work for catering also now in Santa Clara University. And so one of the events was my first day, and I was supposed to shadow someone to learn how to do events by myself and set them up. And he didn't come, and I wasn't really sure what to do. So I did the event by myself the best I could, but I wasn't really sure where I was supposed to go, things like that. So I feel like with that, I could have maybe contacted a manager sooner. Like I did eventually go talk to someone back, because it was an event off campus and I had to go there by myself. So I did eventually come to campus and explain that I wasn't really sure how to do things, like if someone could help me, but maybe just went faster to the manager instead of trying to do the event by myself or setting it up by myself.
Speaking of the campus, I was doing a little research on my own. How do you pronounce your president's name at the university?
Father Ang.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. And who's your congressman in the Yonkers, the fighting 16th district?
I don't know that, sorry.
Who's your congressman here in the Santa Clara area?
Don't know that
Find out.
either.
Mike Honda. And
Okay.
it is Elliot Engel.
Okay.
So what I'm trying to get at
Mhm.
is, it doesn't take, we don't have to dig too deep to know some of these general things, but that stuff you're gonna wanna know. Because if
Okay.
you get an operation like our place,
Mhm.
you're gonna have to learn, and everybody's gonna learn what's around and who's what and who does what and
Definitely.
who are the people. You gotta learn quick, and the more you know, the quicker you can react to find out about certain things that happen around you. So that's, it's all about, digging a little deeper in that regard. What inspired you? Was there an inspiration, and I'm kind of getting to this talk show host thing. Anything there, or is it just like you see someone on TV and you think that's a cool thing to do?
Well, ever since I was little, I was very talkative, and I would always get called out in class to be more quiet. I always
Okay.
loved talking to myself on television, and so that was kind of, when I was a little girl, that's always what I wanted to do. But when I really like watching Ellen, and I think just providing people with entertainment is something I really enjoy. And being in production classes now, I really love creating something for an audience that they can enjoy, and I think that I have something to offer that maybe people would like to watch or see, and just provide that for them.
So would you be talking about topical stuff, like just the latest rumor stuff and this and that, or pundit in the news? What?
Well, my ideal show would be about relationships and
Okay.
kind of offering advice, but also having a bit of a comedic aspect to
Right.
it. But that would kind of be what I would want to do.
Do you read the Santa Clara, the newspaper?
Yeah, I do.
Did you read there was a opinion piece on the pressure to be perfectly fit on campus?
Yes, I did read that.
What do you think?
I mean, our campus, I read somewhere in an article that our campus is the most beautiful people, and that we have a gym and everyone goes to the gym, and there's a lot of students who do care to be fit, but I don't think that there's exactly a pressure to do that. I think it's...
Let me stop you real quick. You're right, I'm glad you read that, and it caught my eye. The Newsweek survey ranked second most beautiful campus in the country.
Yeah.
I don't know how that.
I know. I don't know how
Sorry,
they
it could have been
rank
the
that,
first, which in the second. And then there's a website called College Prowler.
I haven't heard of that. But...
Okay, because that's, I'm not, you don't have to dig that deep, but this said that it considers Santa Clara to have the 6th hottest girls and the 9th hottest guys.
Okay.
So there you go. And if you need anybody to produce your show, I can do it.
All right.
I think that's a talker. Okay? You should do something on campus. Do it.
Yeah, definitely.
But it talks about too much emphasis on appearance.
Yeah.
I mean, so say talk show host, what do you say about that?
I do think that our society puts a great emphasis on appearance in general. Like, I think magazine covers, all the media that we project, everyone's very pretty, slim, slender. So I do think that's an issue that we need to talk about. But I don't think that anyone on campus that doesn't fit the mold or isn't the most beautiful feels as if they're left out or if they need to change or anything like that. I think that we offer like a community feel and that we're all friends. I don't think we need
What do you know about Action News Now, our station in Chico, and Chico itself?
I know that, well, Chico I know is like a retail hub sort of in California, and I know that Action News Now gives news every, like, I think it's at 6:30 p.m. and then at noon you do like a half-hour segment of recent topics, and then every hour you sort of give a summary about what's happening currently in the news.
Okay.
So I know you keep your viewers up to date on.
Do you drink beer?
No, I don't.
Okay. It's home of Sierra Nevada Brewery. It's a pretty cool
Okay.
place. Okay. So anything you'd like to ask about me?
I mean, I guess what I would like to ask about your company is what makes you hire some individuals over others, and what makes people stand out in your eyes?
It's a lot of times a big part of it is a foundation, and where just what they've studied, knowing a lot of times it can be where they came from as far as certain programs. I've hired several from San Francisco State over the years, and it's a great program. Arizona and USC, but that doesn't mean that not everybody from there's automatically got this foundation. So that's a good start. I look at it, and then I like to just feel what they feel about what they want to do. And it's a lot of do they understand? And a lot of it you don't understand a lot of times at the beginning of when you get into this thing. And a lot of people get in entry level, and they're like, what the heck, this is not a paycheck, and that's important to some people. But there's also the people like, I love this, every day's different, every story's different, and I want to know more. I'm nosy. I will work a double shift. I don't care. They know, and they're not worried. They think that will pay off in the beginning. So those are the little things that mean a big deal to us, and it's you got to have a good foundation. You got to have heart. You got to have a feel, and I also look for people who I could say, there's some holes there, but I think we can do something with that person. So
There you go.
All right, thank you.
At this point, we will spin the magic barrel and draw one name for the first scholarship.
Okay. Excuse me, Stephanie Ochotorina from Clear Channel. Can everybody say that all in once again? Right. Okay, gang. Clear Channel. That's the company that put up our 3 scholarships, and we're really indebted to them. Come on up, Stephanie. Tell us about you. I know JD introduced you, but tell us what do you do?
Yes, I'm JD Friedman's executive assistant, and I'm also office manager for our Clear Channel office here in San Francisco. I went to San Francisco State, and I was in radio and television. So. I actually also interned at KRON-TV in the creative services department, so I was in television and radio.
And how long have you been with Clear Channel?
For about 6 years.
Great.
Yeah.
All right. So, and by the way, the most important person when you're a salesman, right, is the assistant, right? In fact, Jackie, the assistant to the president of the company in New York, God love her, we wouldn't have all this going today if Jackie hadn't held on and been so helpful. So get to know the assistants. They really are important, and they're the gatekeepers. Okay, I was thinking of everybody says I'll get off, but what do I do? When my son Nick was growing up in San Francisco, he had to write in a school what his mommy and his daddy did, right? I think he was in the 2nd grade. Nick was a good writer from the start. And he said his mother basically runs around the house and dances to music during the day. And his father yells at people on the telephone. Here we go. Okay, off we go. Where it stops, nobody knows. Okay, everybody. Are you all here? You gotta be here to be here. Okay. Who is the winner?
Wen Zin, Golden Gate University.
Golden Gate, Wen Zin. Okay, where's Wen? Is Wen here? Come on up, we gotta meet you. Congratulations. We have a wonderful.
Hi everyone, I'm Wen Xin. I'm from Golden Gate University. Now I'm studying, I'm a Master of Accountancy and a concentration on taxation. And I learned that we have a great job fair on our school website, so I feel very excited about it. And before I can come to America, I have got some chances to work for the journalist in Shanghai, China. So I'm really interested about.
CCTV?
Oh, no CCTV, but Shanghai TV.
Shanghai TV.
Yes, yes. I'm very like reading books or writing, so I'm gonna to attend this good job fair and listen to get some great advices about my career.
Alrighty, and you have the stove?
Oh yes.
Okay, we'll get that from you. No problem. Okay, off we go. By the way, interviews, right? I'm sure that Paulina thinks, wow, that's behind me. Thank goodness. And did she do a great job? Huh? That's a pretty good interviewer too, right? Talk about preparation. Last Wednesday, okay, I had an interview with a new COO at one of my main clients, right? Last Wednesday. Okay, and I tell my kids at USC, they say, how old are you, Professor? And I say, 107. Not a laugh. So it never ends, okay? And the first thing he said to me, Block, he said, we don't pay you much money. Why do you work so hard for that? What was my answer? My former boss was there at the same time. I said, I'm compensated very fairly. Ain't the time to negotiate, gang. Off we go, Louis.
And you realized that the interview was completely unrehearsed, so that she did a terrific job considering she's really on the spot. But is Pat still here?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to take a minute to, again, I know there have been a lot of thank yous all the way around from the very beginning, but Pat Patton, on behalf of the station and him personally, and Dick Block, realize the amount of effort and thought that goes into putting this together. And I can't say enough about what those two men and their staffs have done to make it possible for you to be here today. They just do a terrific job, and it's appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Michelle, you're next.
How is everyone? Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. How is everyone? Good. Thank you so much for having me on this panel. I've had a lot of twists and turns in my journey. Joshua has agreed to wrap me if I go too long, so it all started when I was 11 years old. I co-anchored a kids news show in Denver, that's where I'm from, for 2.5 years. And I had experience early on. It was great. I learned how to read a teleprompter. I learned about camera presence. I also interviewed a lot of people. I went out to public speaking engagements. But more importantly, I was bitten by the news bug and hooked ever since. I remember even sitting my parents down at one point when I was probably 12 saying, okay guys, this is what I want to do and I'm going to do it. And luckily I had very supportive parents who said, sure, you can. So I did that, and when I was 17, I was very fortunate to be selected into an internship scholarship program at Coors Brewing Company. Teenager at a beer company, I don't know what that was all about, but yeah, I know.
You like beer.
I love beer. But it was a great opportunity for me because I worked in the corporate communications department, and so I wrote articles for the company newspaper, and that lasted for 5 years. It was a great program, and I learned a lot about print. I also learned a lot about the corporate world, and I learned a lot about enterprise as well because I was doing these human interest stories. So I would go around fishing for these stories, and my stories were not company quarterly earning reports or anything like that. They were, the guy who had spent 35 years at the brewery who was retiring, or the guy who was recovering from cancer and wanting to hurry up and get better so he can get back to work, and things like that. And it was a great experience. I got paid pretty well. And I also got a scholarship check at the end of every summer. And that's what helped me go to school. Otherwise, I would have struggled financially to go to college. So I enrolled at Colorado State University, about an hour from Denver. And probably my second week into my freshman year, I went to the campus television station and said, I want to learn everything there is to know at this campus television station. And I was a sponge. I learned everything. I picked up a camera. I went out, I shot, I edited, I produced all of my own stories. I was a reporter, a writer, producer. I was a sports anchor. I had absolutely no idea what I was talking about, but I did it. I was also a news anchor. And that was a great experience. I did that all up until the time I left the school. So my path was clear. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I had the plan. I had an internship at a local TV station, the Gannett station, the summer after my freshman year. And I think it was because of my experience and then networking, I got this internship, which usually is for upperclassmen. But I got it the summer after my freshman year. It was great. I met people there who are still my mentors to this day, and I made a lot of connections, and I had at least 2 people who were waiting for me to graduate so they could help me get a job. And I was on this 5-year college plan because for some reason I decided to add another major. And again, career-oriented, knew exactly what I wanted to do. Then the end of my 4th year, my whole world shifted. The end of my 4th year, I found out I was pregnant. Yeah, the gasp, right? Imagine how I felt. So my focus changed. I had to focus on my family, and when I tell my daughter this story, I always say, it was a joyous time, yes. But career-wise, I was devastated. I thought, okay, I've had these big dreams since I was 11 years old, and now, what am I going to do? How am I going to go from market to market, what people usually do, with a kid in tow and a husband now to have to worry about? And I made the hardest decision I probably have ever made, and that was to leave school with only a year left to go so I could move back to Denver and be closer to my husband and start this family. And so that's what I did. And shortly after my daughter was born, we moved to the East Coast for his job, and time went by, and it was a couple of years. I hadn't been in school, and I hadn't been in a TV studio for a couple of years. And I was watching TV one day, I saw this commercial for a public access station, and I thought, it's been a while, let me go check it out. I'll go to a meeting. And so I went to a meeting, and I met this producer who was looking for a host for his show. And after the meeting, I went up to him and I said, I have experience. Here's my whole life story. I'm your host. Don't look any further. And he said, all right, let's give it a shot. And I remember going into the studio that day of the shoot and walking in and, you know, being around the lights and getting on the desk, and the butterflies in my stomach started going and the adrenaline started rushing again. And I thought, what the heck was I thinking? This is exactly what I need to do. I need to get back on that path. And I went home that day and I told my husband, look, here's what we're doing. Well, we're gonna move back to Colorado. I knew it was gonna happen soon anyway, but when we move back to Colorado, I'm getting back into school. I don't care how long it takes me, I'm gonna finish my degree, and I'm gonna get back on this road that I started on a long time ago. And he luckily was very supportive of that and said, okay. And that's what we did. We moved back to Colorado. I enrolled at what is now called Metro State University. It's in the middle of downtown Denver, great location, and it actually had a really good broadcasting program. But it did not have a campus television station. I was okay with that. It had state-of-the-art equipment, a control room, and a studio that was used for the classes, but there really wasn't a program or a station going on. All of the tools for it. Well, shortly after I enrolled, I met these 3 guys who were trying to start one. And they had some program, it was a really strange program that they would stream online. And it was the mix between SportsCenter and The Daily Show. But it wasn't funny, and it was kind of cheesy, but they were really trying to start a news program. And so we got together, brainstormed, and came up with these ideas and started it. And when we started the program, there was the 4 of us, and by the time I left the school, there were 30 students. And now, students are actually getting paid to work there, which is great. They're on a work-study program. And I was really proud of that work because we proved to the school that it's such a valuable resource for the students. You've heard, and you'll probably hear from more of our panelists, that the experience you get, that hands-on experience, is so much more important than what you learn in a classroom. And you do that through your campus television station. Who has access to that right now at your school? And keep your hands up. Are you guys all involved? If you're not, great. If you're not, on Monday, go to the campus television station and get involved right now. And try everything. Behind the camera, in front of the camera, write, produce, do everything. Because maybe you'll find your niche and find what you're really, really good at. So we did that. I was the news director, and I also produced one of the news shows, and I anchored. And one day I get an email from the president of a broadcasting association based out in Washington, D.C., and he happened to be surfing the web, looking at college stations, found our show, and liked it, and emailed me and said he thought I had some talent. Asked what my plans were after I graduate. I told him my whole life story too. I tell anyone my whole life story if you ask. and he said, well, great, let me get you in contact with a few people so I can help you. Well, a few months go by and he comes out to Denver to host a town hall meeting with the CBS O&O in Denver. The newspaper and a lot of community members invited me and a few other journalism students to come to this meeting. And so I went to the meeting and he introduced me to everyone at the station. The last person I met was the news director, only because he was standing near my car and I was getting ready to leave. So I talked to him for a good 10 minutes, told him what I've done, where I'm at, and where I want to be. And I said, I would love to pick your brain because I was on this path once before and I want to get back on it with, networking contacts. And I'd love to pick your brain to see how I get my foot in the door. And he said, great, handed me his card, give me a call. Well, a few months go by and we go to coffee. And we actually had coffee inside of his office. It was for an hour and just sort of talked about his path, my path, and we really connected. And he invited me to stay for a rundown meeting, and so it was really exciting because I think there was a lot of breaking news happening that day too. So I saw, I just sat in the newsroom, sat in the rundown meeting, and I thought, I can do this. This is where I need to be. And 2 weeks after that coffee meeting, he called me and he said, Michelle, I have this position open up. It's not on air, but I think it's something you'd be really interested in, and it's a foot in the door. And I said, okay. So he hired me as an online editor, which is basically a web producer. And this was around the time where newsrooms were really shifting and understanding that their website was important. Long gone are the days where we're waiting on stories to break, or we're waiting on breaking news to break it on TV. Now we break it everywhere. We break it on Twitter, we break it on Facebook, we break it on our websites. And this is during that time where we were all shifting toward that. And so I produced stories, I posted video, anything you saw online. And then also, if there were stories that they didn't want to air on TV that they weren't covering that day, I would go out and cover it and then come back and write the story. So it was great. But I remember signing my contract. It was a year contract. And I told my boss before I signed, I said, so this is for 1 year. So this means that I have a full year to talk you into putting me on air. Because I know I'm going to do it. And he kind of laughed it off and said, yeah, we'll see what happens. And within 2 months, I was on air, which was great. I started as a web specialist. They started this franchise, and what we would do was break from big stories of the day. So let's say Hurricane Katrina. And then I would come on to the nightside shows, and I would talk about what's on the internet, where you could go. And to, maybe see before and after satellite images, or, certain websites you could use to save you money, things like that. So I did that for a while, and then a blizzard hit in Denver, and my boss needed another reporting crew out in the snow and asked me to, report from the snow for 4 hours one morning. And I said, sure, why not? Sounds great. And so I did that, and luckily the following weekend we had another blizzard, and he asked me to go out there again, and I did it, and unbeknownst to me, that was my audition for a morning reporter gig. And a couple days after that, he offered me a morning reporter job, and I did that. Great experience. I did that for about 4 years, and I've been moving on ever since. I've been a morning reporter, I've been a dayside reporter, I've been a morning anchor / reporter, I've been a 4 p.m. anchor / nightside reporter. Now I'm the morning and noon anchor in the Bay Area at KPIX 5. And I have 2 beautiful daughters now. Okay, great.
That's a great story, and that's what you have to look forward to. If you want to climb that ladder, you take whatever rung you can to get where you want to go. And the other interesting thing is that you may start down a path thinking that you want to do a particular thing. You knew what you wanted to do, but many times you'll start down a road thinking that this is something you want to do, and find with exposure to other opportunities that actually there's something else that appeals to you as you move along. Flexibility. 3 things. You need talent. You've got talent. You need tenacity. You've got tenacity. And you need timing. A little bit of luck along the way. So remember the 3 T's. Now, Josh, you're on.
Thank you. Michelle's story reminded me of a quote from Ted Turner when they asked him how he became successful. He said, "Early to bed, early to rise. Work like hell and advertise." Basically, which makes sense to me. Makes sense to me. So good morning. I'm Joshua Johnson. I'm your morning newscaster for KQED News, which is a service of KQED Public Radio. I work mostly on the radio side. We're an NPR news station. We're the primary NPR news station that serves the San Francisco Bay Area. I have been here for almost 4 years. July will be 4 years. And yes, I do still love it here. It's an endlessly fascinating place. Before I was here, I was the afternoon anchor reporter for WLRN Miami Herald News in Miami, Florida, which I'm from South Florida. WLRN Miami Herald News is a partnership between the Miami Herald newspaper and WLRN Public Radio, and I was one of the first staffers who was hired to be a part of that partnership. And so after 6 years covering everything that makes Florida what it is, I said, I'm out, and I walked away. Just a hair before burnout, like that, far before burnout, left, and then this job came up, and so here I am. My job at KQED now involves me getting up at 3:30 in the morning, probably right around the time that you're...
I get up at 2:15.
Oh, you got me. You got me. So my job involves me sleeping in, apparently. I get in at 5, I'm on at 6, and my job is to build and edit and write and construct newscasts that cover the 9-county Bay Area and Sacramento. There is sound that's left for me from the day before, but my job is to try to build a narrative for each newscast. Life is not all serious, so my newscasts are not all serious. Life is not all breaking news, so my newscasts are not all breaking news. And the Bay Area is a unique place, and so my newscasts need to sound unique. They have to have the information you need, but I also want it to sound like we actually live here. I want it to sound like I'm actually a neighbor who understands where the traffic is in San Francisco and what's going on in Oakland and how expensive it is to live in Santa Clara and what life is like here. It should sound like if you were an alien and you fell from another planet and wanted to know what these crazy people in the Bay Area were like, you should be able to turn to 88.5, and over the narrative of what you hear in the course of the day, you should have an idea of what it is that we're all about. I also help work on our website. I help with our Twitter presence and our social media presence. We are a converged newsroom, so the on-air and online people work about 10 feet away from one another, and we have a wonderfully integrated operation. I also submit on our television side. We have a Friday evening public affairs program called KQED Newsroom, and those of us on the radio side submit for the TV side also. We are increasingly converging our station, even down to sharing the same computer system. That should be happening in the next year, I think. So the whole station will run on one newsroom system, radio, TV, and online as a converged newsroom. For those of you who, does anyone here listen to KQED? Does everyone here know what public radio is? Fewer hands, glad I asked. There was a law passed in the 60s called the Public Broadcasting Act, which mandated that a certain piece of the spectrum be set aside for educational television. Someone, sneaky, in Congress snuck the words, "and radio," into the bill, and so it went from being the Public Television Act to the Public Broadcasting Act. National Public Radio is an association, a network that is run by member stations to provide programming that the stations can opt to buy or not. If you run one NPR program, you're a member station. You don't have to run the whole schedule. KQED is a locally owned and operated station that is essentially owned by its members. We're a nonprofit organization that is completely editorially independent. Some stations are part of school districts, like the station I was at, WLRN. Some stations are part of colleges and universities. We are an independent station. How I got to WLRN was as probably from when I was a little kid, when I was 2 or 3, I learned how a carburetor worked. And I ran around asking everybody if they knew. And they didn't know. And I told them. To this day, I don't remember how a carburetor works. But I remember how I felt when I told them. And I remember how good it felt to be the guy who knew. And then I got tired of that, and I found something else to go ask them if they didn't know. And so I didn't really get hooked on news, I got hooked on knowledge. I got hooked on being clued in. I also developed an affinity for the performing arts. My other degree is in theater, as you might have guessed. And I found that I have this capacity for learning and for storytelling. And the way that they merged for me is as a career in journalism. I have found that there's not much on mic that I am afraid to do. News, traffic, weather, sports, talk. I did a game show in college. Like, there's not really much that scares me, because ultimately it all boils down to gaining information and sharing information in a compelling way. And so from very, very little, I was like, this is lucrative. I can do this. People will listen. If I have good information, they'll laugh, they'll clap, they'll applaud, they'll ask me to do it again. Some of them, throw tips. This is great. And off I went, and I absolutely loved it. As I went deeper into the business, I began to discover that I also had this affinity for public service and the idea that what we do in a time of need can be really very important. I've covered a number of hurricanes, being from Miami. Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Jean, Dennis, Katrina, Rita, and Wilma. If I meet anybody who has any of those names, I'm just going to sock her and make it look like an accident, because the memories are just, they're too much. And right now at KQED, I'm helping update our earthquake plan, which is something that I'm very, very concerned about. And it's one of the things that, as we talked about with J.D. Freeman from Clear Channel about how radio isn't going away, that's one of the reasons why I hope it's not, because broadcasters like us are guaranteed to be there for you in a time of need. Sidebar, just in case you're curious about what would happen if there was an earthquake. KQED is built to withstand an earthquake. The most seismically safe part of our building is master control and the news booth where I sit. If our building was red tagged, we could go to the transmitter, plug directly into the transmitter, and be on the air. If the antenna fell down the tower, we could move to another tower. If the tower was destroyed, we could move to our tower in Mount Sutro. If that was destroyed, we could go to our transmitter in Sacramento. If that was destroyed, we could move to our studio in Silicon Valley. If that was destroyed, we could put a signal on a phone line, send it down to Los Angeles, beam it up to Washington, D.C., put it on a satellite, and bring it back to you. That's how KQED got back on the air after the Loma Prieta earthquake. And if all of that failed, we could call our antenna vendor, and they could send us a brand new antenna within 24 hours. I don't think Stitcher and Slacker and Spotify are going to do that for you. We as broadcasters have a responsibility to be here no matter what in a time of disaster. And as much as people are excited about new media, and I'm excited too, it's also nice to be able to work for a group of people that says, we promise to be there. When it hits the fan, when the earth moves, when the hills catch fire, when the plane crashes, when terror strikes again, we will be there, no matter what. And I take that seriously. And I think as much as we enjoy the business, there is something special about working alongside people who've made a professional promise to say, it's going to be okay. Take a breath. We're all a little freaked out, but we have the information. We'll tell you what we know as we know it. Relax. It's going to be okay. And that's one of the things about my job that I like, that I never got to discover until I got into it. And I think that's a nice fringe benefit to have, is knowing people can rely on you. So my advice, write. You can't be a good communicator if you can't write well. Spelling, syntax, grammar, punctuation, style, clarity, conciseness, all of that stuff counts. I spend a good part of my day every morning, going over scripts going, no, that's 2 sentences, it should only be 1. This goes at the end, that goes at the beginning. That doesn't even belong there. I mean, I find myself fixing and refixing and re-refixing scripts over and over again. Build facility with writing. Mervyn Block. MervynBlock.com is a website. Mervyn, M-E-R-V-I-N, Block.com is a good resource for hacking up television broadcast scripts. He's a script doctor. He's he's ruthless, and I love him. MervynBlock.com. So learn to write with great skill. I agree with Michelle and her advice about diving in and learning everything you can about the business, but please go live a full life. Broadcasters are no good to their audiences if all you know how to do is cut a package and do a stand-up tease. You gotta have a life. Go do something that don't involve a camera and a mic. One of my colleagues is a big fan of salmon. He can tell you everything it is to know about coho salmon and steelhead and the run. And that sounds like a weird interest until California's in a drought. And then suddenly the lack of water makes his affinity for salmon newsworthy. That thing in your life that you are totally geeked out about may very well be the thing that makes you the go-to reporter someday. So whatever your affinities are outside of the newsroom, build them, indulge them. Go be a three-dimensional person, not only for your professional sake, but for your sanity's sake. I would dive in right now. Don't wait. If you want to go do a talk show, Paulina, you should be on YouTube right now. You shouldn't wait for somebody to give you a job. If you want to go cover sports and write about it, write. Get a blog. WordPress is free. If you want to start learning about weather, weather.gov/San Francisco. Read the forecasts, read the forecast discussion like I do every morning, and start putting together weathercasts. Do it. If you want to be on radio, build a podcast. If you want to start doing graphic arts, buy Photoshop or whatever program you want. Buy After Effects. Dive in. Because once you meet one of these people and they say, so what do you want to do? I want to be a talk show host. As a matter of fact, I already have a show. You send me a link, I look at it and I can go, I'm not the person to help you, but I know who is. Will you be ready when the door opens? What will you have to show for your ambition? Will you have eagerness or will you have experience? What will you have to show for your ambition when the door opens? And finally, I would say, follow your bliss. I still think broadcasting is absolute magic. Even today, when I walked in this studio, I was like, oh my God, I've never been here before. Nobody's stopping me. Like this, I turn 10 years old all over again. Every time I go to a new studio, every time I go to a new station, I look upon this place the way an artist looks upon a blank canvas. Think of what I could do in here. To this day, being in a studio is still pure magic to me. Yes, some days it's work. But overall, what the hell else am I gonna do that makes me this happy? If broadcasting is your bliss, if television or radio or music or movies or sales or community involvement is your magic, if that's what makes you happy, go do it. The paycheck will come, the longevity will come, the benefits will come if you're flexible, and if you chase that thing that just go be a 10-year-old for the rest of your career. The minute you go past 10, I think you've gone too far. Thanks.
Folks, that's passion. Emily McLaughlin, you're next.
Well, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. I'm really flattered to be here. My path is much shorter than some of our other wonderful, not elder, but just experienced panelists. So I recently graduated from UCLA. I went to school there. Go Bruins, yeah. I've always been a passion for sports. I've played pretty much every sport growing up, like water polo and field hockey, even the bizarre ones. And so that ended up, I rowed in college, which is also very bizarre. It's one of the only Division I NCAA sponsored sports that you can walk onto without any experience. But I've loved being on a team and being competitive. And you know, I work really hard at sports. I'm not the best athlete, but I try really hard. So I ended up rowing for UCLA for 4 years. With that, I don't necessarily you don't necessarily have the opportunity to do a ton of internships because you're working 20 hours a week at rowing and you're waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, not 3 and not 2:15, but it's still early, especially when you're in college. So, you know, I have a very different path than many of you and many of the people up here, but I found passion in sports. I worked in the athletic department because I was doing summer school and, you know, they offered me a job. I studied communications and accounting because I liked talking with people, understanding where people come from, you know, reading nonverbal cues and what are they trying to get at with what they're saying. But then at the same time, I liked math and I like numbers and how do you make communications mean something on the number side. So I ended up, the athletic department, I was fortunate enough, they offered an internship program. Adidas sponsors UCLA and its apparel, and they were offering a sports marketing internship. So I'm like, hell yeah, like, I love sports, I love sporting equipment, you know, it's marketing, that's cool. Yeah, why not? I was fortunate enough to get the position there. I worked there over the summer, and I was like, this is great. Working in sports and just talking about athletes, like there was TVs on everywhere, watched with ESPN, and that was like normal. And I'm like, this is pretty badass. You know, I didn't necessarily, my role, I was working in communications and PR, and it wasn't necessarily, I did communications and I've done writing, but I wouldn't say that that's like my strongest suit ever, but it's a work in progress and you make do. I finished my senior year and the athletic department then like offered this internship program at the Pac-12 Networks, which is a new television media company. It's sports media. We are a not-for-profit organization, entirely owned by our 12 member institutions. Cal and Stanford are the 2 Bay Area schools that we cover. UCLA and USC, which are down in the South in LA, which is my affiliation. This is its second year in broadcasting, and this year we've covered we will cover 750 live events, televised nationally, which is really exciting. And so I applied for this opportunity, interviewed, and luckily got the internship. I don't know how I've been fortunate enough to land these lucky experiences. After 3 months of working at the Pac-12 Networks, working in communications, a full-time position happened to open up, and so I applied for that and was brought on full-time. And so since I graduated in June of 2013, I started working for the Pac-12 Networks in July, and I've been working there ever since. So a little bit about what I do at the Pac-12 Networks. I work in communications and PR, so I promote our programming, our talent, our sales and our sponsorships and our agreements with other companies. So one of the cool things that I do is I actually schedule radio interviews. So all of our talent, I try and reach out to stations, get them on their sports networks or sports radio. And that's kind of fun because I do listen to the iHeartRadio app so that I can hear that my talent are on the radio stations that I set them up and make sure that they're plugging our programming and they're plugging our talent and all that stuff. So that's really fun. Another part of my job is that I also do the internal communications. I do our internal newsletter, and I send out news clippings of relevant news stories in the industry and things relevant to our company. And that's one of the most rewarding parts about my job. Because I'm still young and I still don't really know what I want to do. You know, you figure it out day by day. I love what I do and I love every day, but then there's also like these other really cool jobs throughout the company that I don't know enough about because I haven't had the experience, but by doing the internal newsletter, I'm able to talk with these people and learn about what they do on a day-to-day basis. What are their interests aside from working in the control room, or what is traffic? You know, there's so many people in the company that don't know what traffic is. You know, the common misconception that they tell you what the traffic is like in the area. Well, we're a sports media company, so we don't do traffic, but instead they plug every single event into our system, every single ad sales, every single on-air promo, all of it. And we have 7 networks. We have our Pac-12 network, which is broadcast nationally, and then we also have some of our more regionalized networks. So if you have Comcast here in the Bay Area, you'll get Pac-12 network and you'll get Pac-12 Bay Area, and the Bay Area is focused on mostly Cal and Stanford sports. So that job is crazy, and I don't want to do that, but I'm glad I know about it so that I do know what I do and don't want to do. So what else am I supposed to say? I think one of the coolest things about being in this industry is how it's changing. I didn't want to get a Twitter like 4 years ago when it was hip, and I'm young and I'm supposed to be on Twitter and all the social media sites. But then, at work now I see pretty much everyone in the company has a Twitter handle, and, it's very specific to what you're doing. Like, I had to stop tweeting to my friends about, I packed the wrong pair of shoes, I'm wearing mismatched shoes. That's not relevant to anyone. I should probably start tweeting about relevant things to the sports industry and newsworthy items. And I might not know about a lot of news, but I do know, who tore their ACL and things like that. So my job and my role is a little bit different from some of the people up here, but I have a passion for sports, and it's so fun to work in sports, and whether it's rowing or football or basketball or swimming and diving, sand volleyball, it's just a lot of fun. My advice for you, you could probably give me advice, but my advice for you would probably be to ask questions. I'm learning every day. I'm learning sitting up here. I'm learning every day on the job. And I think the best way to do a good job is to ask questions, get a broad understanding of everything so that you know how to best apply your skills. You know how to do the best job possible. If someone asks you to do something, for me, I want to know, well, what's the end goal? What's the objective? What would be an adequate reaction, or, I want more questions so I know how to best do the job that I'm asked to do. And I think the other thing that I would say is, you might not have a resume filled with internships, and I think that that's okay. You can apply for jobs that fit your mold. I happen to be passionate in sports and have some relevant experience, and I made it work for me by applying to Adidas. And I am passionate about sports, and I am articulate, and so you make it work, make the job work for you, and you can have your skills, which might not be easy to list on paper from an internship and directly relatable work experience, but you can draw from your life experiences and make it happen. And then I think you should just be confident. Everyone has their own skills and are unique in their own way, and you can just be confident and be proud and fake it till you make it. But that would probably be my advice for you.
Our industry is filled with young people, and there are a lot of businesses that you really have to hang around for a long, long time in order to be successful and in order to get meaningful jobs. That's not true in our business. Our business, maybe it's because people burn out, but our business is filled with young people, and here's, just out of school, and you hear the wonderful job. So keep that in mind. Don't feel that your goals have to be long range. Get off to a start. Now, is there anybody here who'd like to make money? Just wondering. Tom is a general manager of a station, but his career path really came through sales. And that's a wonderful way to make money, isn't it, Tom?
Worked for us.
Tell them about it.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here with this distinguished panel. It's something I always look forward to coming back and giving back. And I'm glad to be considered as one of those young people in the business. So thank you very much, Steve. I appreciate that. So my career started, I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And I got really, really close. I went to St. John's University in New York. And I'm on this glide path. I played for the United States All-Star team in 1973. That does make me still young. And got signed on the Detroit Tigers, went all the way up to big league camp, was on the non-roster invitee list, which was terrific with all these big guys that I had watched growing up. Al Kaline was one of my managers, and it was really incredible. And then that wonderful thing happened and blew out my rotator cuff. So I was a 6'5" lefty. And back in those days, and actually today, all you have to do is two things if you want to make the big leagues as a lefty. You know what those are? Inhale and exhale. And you make a ton of money. So blew my arm out and had to figure out what I was going to do. And I had to get a real job. And as close to a real job as I could get was I had to move to South Philadelphia. And I sold disposable diapers for Johnson & Johnson baby products. And I took a lot of crap, literally. And I walked through Front Street, Center Street, really tough neighborhood, sold more diapers than anybody in the United States, and I decided that, you know what, this really isn't why I went to school. And so I came back and I taught it for a couple of years at St. John's University when I was going for my master's, which I still have 7 credits left to get, which I will get before it's all over. And I met a number of these wonderful people in our industry. I met a lot of great men and women who were really well dressed, and little by little I got to understand it. And I got a job as an intern, and I was an intern for WNBC TV New York. In those days they called them stringers. And I was a stringer and sold through the summer. And after that, one of my mentors at St. John's, and the benefit of going to a school, say like SF State, is to have an adjunct instructor. How many folks have adjunct instructors here? So these folks are really connected. And when you're really connected, it's terrific, because my mentor said to me, if you're interested in this business, give me a call. Well, I called him. I said, Mr. Williams, may he rest in peace. He said, I can get you an interview. And 14 interviews later, I got a job as a research analyst in New York City. And I brought my little bag every day, and I sat in this little room for 12 hours, and I did ratings estimates for about 25 different television stations at a rep firm in New York. And after that, they decided that throughout what they watched, I was the first one in, I was the last one out. I asked my boss, is there anything that you saw that you want me to do differently? What else can I improve? And I had that gene throughout my entire career, whether it was playing baseball. Hey, help me to understand, am I at the right weight? You want me to pitch at 230? You want me to be at 225? I'll always ask questions. And from that point in time, they launched me. I launched my career. I sold in New York City, called on some of the biggest agencies, and then in 1983 moved to Denver. And ironically, in this business, which is what's great, you get to meet a lot of folks. And Michelle and I worked at the same television station. Thank God for her. She worked there a lot later than I did, but it was really a great experience. And I was national sales manager 2.5 years. Moved over to the local side 2.5 years later, and I was local retail manager. When my wife was 8.5 months pregnant, I decided to move her to the Garden Spot of New York, Albany, New York, for my first director of sales position. So if you want to continue to move in this business, pretty much you better be ready to pack your bags on a moment's notice. So 2.5 years there, I worked for Viacom, and the president of Viacom said, I want to come in and talk with you, and I knew 1 or 2 things would happen. I was going to get blown out, or he's going to move me. Well, he moved me again, and of course my wife was 8.5 months pregnant this time. So here we go off to St. Louis to CBS there, at which I continue to improve and make the mistakes that you're not permitted to make in a market like San Francisco. So you continue to work your way up, you continue to ask questions. You continue to be a student of the business to the point in time where you have an opportunity to receive a phone call and say, I hear a lot of good things about you. Would you be interested in moving to the 5th market in the country to run our sales department? And that was 1996. So nearly 20 years later, I was the general sales manager at KTVU. We then bought KICU TV 36, our duopoly station. I went down to run that exclusively. 2 years into it, I came back to oversee both on the sales side and continue to run KICU. In those days and today, 2 jobs are better than none, so I said, absolutely, I think it's a great idea when the president asked me. And then 3 years ago, I felt like Lou Gehrig. I was like the luckiest man on the face of the earth because I was given the opportunity to run KTVU and KICU. And on a day-to-day basis, I'm responsible for all of the day-to-day operations, talent, programming, sales, community affairs, CSD, promotion, Twitter, you name it. Everything always winds up typically at my desk. And what's really spectacular about it is that I love reverse mentoring. And I have a question. How many of you folks watch free over-the-air local television news? Raise your hands high. That's pretty darn good. How many of you follow Channel 2 on our website? You follow us on Twitter? How about YouTube? So what my goal is, I want to leave our place a lot better than when I found it, and it was in really good shape when I found it. And so folks like you in this room have the opportunity to help people like me and like us. And this is what I do a lot of at our station. I'll find someone who's grown up with a computer in their hand. I did not, but we've all had to adapt. And reverse mentoring is an incredible tool that I really tap into. And one of the things that's the most important is you never get a second chance to make a first impression. I can't tell you how many notes I get that have my name misspelled. I can't tell you how many times I have resumes that have typos on them. I can't tell you how many times that people say they have attention to detail in my office and they don't know what my background is, or that Cox Broadcasting owns 14 stations, 55 radio stations. We're privately held, and we have 55,000 employees. So you never get a second chance to make a first impression, and that's really, really, really crucial. You also want to tie some of your past experiences. You want to weave the common thread. I heard something earlier, and it struck me, because in my mind, I studied with a fellow, his name is Willie Jolly, he's a motivational fella. And he said, a setback is nothing but a setup for a comeback. And it's so true. And I remember those words to this day. And you folks are in a position to help our industry continue to grow. Television is now at the highest viewing it's ever been. It's just enormously fragmented right now. And so there is an opportunity. And our challenge right now is to get millennials to be hooked on our product and then continue to grow with us. And that is really, really exciting. So we just finished completing a lot of research, and the research says that when you're 18 to 24, the best place I can reach you is probably 3 things. Well, guess what? Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Google, all those areas. But what's fascinating is as you get to 28 and 32, you start to gravitate back towards free over-the-air television. And we are here to inform, inspire, entertain. You know, there's nothing like our ability to aggregate eyeballs at one given time. The Super Bowl this year on our air was the single largest event ever watched in the history of TV. And I'm one of the young guys who got to sell the last episode of MASH. And some of you may not have even heard of that. Okay? So, be ready to move. Always ask questions. Be the first one in, be the last one out. I cannot tell you how many interns I see walk into our shop and they're disheveled, they walk in late. Frank Somerville, who you probably have heard of, was an intern at our station. He's gone on to have a pretty good career. We probably hire 60 or 70% of the interns that come to our television stations. It is a wonderful opportunity. If you don't have an internship, make sure you get one. Get one secured in advance. Don't wait for everybody to come in at the same time. And you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I have been really, really blessed I remember one of my first mentors drew a picture. He said, 7 a.m., 7 p.m., it's a burnout business. He said, is this for you? And I said, absolutely. And it's fascinating how quickly 34 years can go by, and how much fun you can have, and how many great people you meet over the course of time, and how many folks that you've grown up with in the business now run companies. And if there was ever a job invented for me from a competitive level, from a collegial, from camaraderie, to something that changes every day, that's so diverse, you just don't know what you're going to be working with the next day. That really keeps you young. So I'm grateful to be able to sit here this morning and tell you a little bit about my career. I'd be happy to answer questions later, but thanks for giving me the opportunity, and congratulations to this great panel.
Hey, Tom.
Yes.
This is like one thing that if you aren't utilizing, how many people in here have a LinkedIn account? All right, thank you. Make sure, massage that. It's a wealth of knowledge, and you know what? We're looking at that, and you should be looking at that daily. You know, even when we call on clients, we leave a message. We can tell that the client will look at LinkedIn to see how legitimate we are. It's a very, very powerful business tool. So I just want to mention that.
Thank you, and thank you, Tom. If you're 15 minutes early, you're on time. If you're on time, you're late. Kimberly, you're on.
Thank you. I'm really humbled to be up here in front of you and have really enjoyed everyone's story this morning, so thank you. Hello, my name is Kimberly Terry. I grew up in San Leandro in the East Bay, and I grew up watching news. My parents were news hounds. The news was always, always on. I remember when the Loma Prieta earthquake happened, first thing my parents did was turn on the TV, and we watched, and we watched, and we watched. And as, you know, a young girl, I was absolutely terrified. I remember the images of the Bay Bridge and just not knowing as a kid how to filter all of that information that was constantly coming at me because the news was always on at my house. But what it did do was it inspired me to start asking questions. So anytime we were driving around town, I'd say, why is that way? Or what's being built over there? Or why is that way? And it would drive my parents crazy until they finally said, you should just become a reporter so you can figure out all the answers to all these questions. And so I went to San Francisco State. And I loved it there. I chose to go there because I knew that they had such a great program. And it was a great program. And I got all the hands-on experience that I needed. And I feel like it really prepared me to do every aspect. And I think it's so important, I know other people have said this, but to know every aspect of the job, not just your own, but the people who are working the floor and the directors and the photographers. I say that a photographer does 80% of my work. And don't mess with your photographer because they can mess with you back very easily. I have great respect for everyone who does their jobs to allow me to do mine. I interned at KTVU, got great experience on their morning show, woke up every morning at like midnight and went in and learned and grew from there. I ended up graduating, and I have to say that I was talking to someone else about this. Out of everyone who graduated with me at San Francisco State who wanted to be on air, I think 2 of us have ended up doing it and staying with it for various reasons. And the other one is Miguel Almaguer, who is a network reporter. So occasionally we'll run into each other since we're both NBC. And I'll be like, I stole your script the other day. And he'll say, I stole your script. Great video. But it's great to see him, and it's great to see someone who continued on with their dream. I first moved to Montana. And everyone had told me going into this job, you're not going to be an anchor. You can't just start out as an anchor. That just doesn't happen. I started out as an anchor. And I started out in Montana. It was a morning show. It was broadcast all through the western part of the states and parts of British Columbia. I had great experience there. I had a co-anchor who would just torment me as I was anchoring. He'd start poking me, he'd start whispering things. The news or the director would start telling me stories about his day in my ear while I'm reading the news. But it was great practice, because that's what you have to do. You have to deal with all these distractions and stay completely focused on what it is you're trying to convey. It was great experience. The other big thing I learned in Montana from my news director was, you're not just reading. You're telling people a story, and there are people who are watching, and it's families who are watching. It is victims who are watching. It is all of these people, and you can't just look at the camera. You need to see the faces of every single person that you're talking to and really tell a story and make that story matter. Those two things really helped me. From there, I went to Medford, Oregon. It was kind of a lateral move. I was moving for personal reasons at the time. And I was hired as an anchor reporter. I ended up anchoring. I probably, in my 2.5 years there, reported maybe 4 days out of that, because I anchored primarily there as well. And it was a fantastic experience. And from there, I really learned how important it is to be part of the community, as you were mentioning. Enmesh yourself in the community, love the community. And while you first might move there and be like, I don't know, I'm in Montana and geez, but the people are great. And I still go back to Missoula and I still go back to Medford because, and every time I fly home to those places, that's how I feel like I'm flying home, because those communities became a big part of me. And it allowed me to tell stories better. From there, I moved to Las Vegas, and it was an awesome experience. It is a great market for any of you guys who are interested. The reason being is that we had a 4, 4:30, a 5, 6, and 6:30. That means 2 VOSOTs and 2 live packages every day. And there's big breaking news all of the time, So I cut my teeth. I had to learn how to run in high heels, how to ask the right questions, how to stay in the desert for 8 or 12 hours because there's a standoff and, you know, there's no restrooms nearby, there's no place to get a water, and you're just live all the time. But it was great experience. It was good experience. At the time, to be honest with you, I hadn't thought about moving home. So I'm about 8 years into my career. I hadn't thought to move home. My husband, who is a he's a cameraman, got a job in this market and narrowed down my markets to 1, which I thanked him for. I thought, how am I going to get into this market? There's no way. I mean, I'm in Las Vegas. What do I do? There was a way. And I ended up coming in as a freelance reporter, working. And at first they said, we can only put you on for 2 days. And then 2 days became 5 days. Now I work an average of 3 to 5 or 6 days a week. And it works for me. Suggestions? Oh, and the other thing I have to say is because I grew up watching so much news, it was awesome to move back here and to be working alongside the people I so respected from growing up and seeing their faces and them telling me stories as a little girl. So it was really awesome for me. Suggestions: read everything. Be a student of life. I read everything. I spend 4 hours in the car commuting. If I have to work out of San Jose, and I listen to audiobooks. I listen to biographies. I listen to everything under the sun, history, everything. I love life, and I love being a student of life, and I take everything in that I possibly can and learn from it and try to see how it fits into my life. Everyone here has mentioned this, social media, Twitter, Facebook. My big thing with that is it's going out so fast. Just be very careful. Make sure that you're right. Make sure that you're not just trying to be competitive and trying to get it out first. Make sure you check your facts and then put it out. And try to be the first one to get it out correctly. And take chances. Like I said, everyone had told me, no, there's no way you're going to be an anchor first out of college. Just take chances. I sent tapes to everywhere. And it takes one news director or one general manager to say, I'll take a chance on her. And a news director did. And when I moved to Montana, someone said to me, I'm surprised you'd apply here. And I said, why? And they said, well, you're just of color. And why would you even think to send a tape to Montana, and none of my friends who are of color sent tapes to Montana. And I said, because it takes one, and there was one, and he's my boss. And it takes one, just one person to look at you and say, okay, I'll take a chance. And it was a great experience. And mentors. Marty Gonzalez was one of my teachers. Hey, Marty. And one of my greatest mentors. I stayed in contact with him throughout my career, emailing him if I was having problems like, there's a reporter who's being really mean to me and it's making me crazy, or there's a photographer and he refuses to do this, or even, I don't know, I have this boyfriend and I don't know if I should move, or, you know, I want to move for my career. He was awesome. He was a huge support because he had taken the journey and he was able to help me with mine. Ben Fong Torres was another one of my college professors who is one of the founding editors of Rolling Stone magazine. Because I was a print journalism minor, he was one of my mentors, and he was fantastic. He shed a whole other light. So I would email Marty, I would email Ben Fong Torres, and the third one was John Hewitt, who was another professor of mine at San Francisco State University, who makes documentaries and travels the world, and you know, they just help you. Those little bumps in your career where you need a little push. So I thank you for that. But find a good mentor, or three. It really, really, really helps. And I think that's all I've got.
This is the 26th career day that NATPE has sponsored. And I have to tell you, this is the best panel out of all 26 of them. You've been great. You really have been great, and we thank you.